This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, the Georgia Court of Appeals has decided to stay the election subversion case in Fulton County pending its ruling on the disqualification of District Attorney Fani Willis, and she indicted Trump and 18 other co-conspirators last year. Now, arguments won't begin until November, and we're actually not expecting to get a decision in this appeals case until the spring of 2025. So, first of all, this means that there's going to be no trial before the November election. Is that correct?
It does. And I just want to start by saying I think this is outrageous. I mean, I think I'm not here to condone whatever conduct went on between the prosecutor and the special prosecutor. But come on. I mean, this whole idea that somehow Donald Trump can't be prosecuted, can't get a fair trial because of whatever interpersonal HR issues take place between Fani Willis and the guy who has, by the way, stepped down. He's not even on the case anymore. Has allowed a sideshow to derail the main show. And I think the trial judge was fair in giving this a full hearing, but then saying the case goes forward. So I just want to start by saying the Court of Appeals decision here to say this trial can't go forward while this sideshow gets litigated is just, to me, is inexplicable and has not been covered by the mainstream media as to me, as inexplicable as what we've seen the U.S. Supreme Court do in some of its delays, what we've seen Judge Cannon do in Florida. This is truly a circumstance where justice delayed is justice denied.
Now, not all of the defendants were involved in the appeal of Fani Willis's ruling. In fact, John Eastman requested a speedy trial. So why can't Fani Willis bring him and some other co-defendants who are not a party to this appeal to trial in the meantime?
I hope they do. I hope she does. And by the way, it's probably a commentary, Brian, on John Eastman's quality of lawyering. I mean, so far, pretty much every legal decision and argument we've heard from him, starting with the election denial through this, has not been great legal judgment.
Right.
John Eastman, anyway. But no, I hope she does. I mean, you're right. John Eastman asked for a speedy trial. Give him a speedy trial. Let's have a trial on this before the election. Let's let the American public and a jury of John Eastman's peers in Fulton County, Georgia, hear the evidence of his racketeering allegations, the allegations against him for racketeering. So I hope they do.
Well, just digging into a little bit of a thought experiment on this, do you think that if Fani Willis went forward with the appealed co-defendants, including John Eastman, that it would actually redound to Trump's benefit by showing their hand in terms of what the prosecutor's case against him is ultimately going to look like?
I don't think so. A couple of reasons why. Number one, it was notwithstanding the prosecutor's insistence that to the court that they were prepared to try all 18 or 19 of these people together. Like, the judge, if you remember when they said that, the judge was kind of dubious. I mean,
yeah.
The government has to say that, but this was always going to be broken into multiple pieces, right? It's just logistically, you can't have that many people in a courtroom with a jury tracking the evidence against all of these people. So The truth is, this was always going to have to be faced. And so let's start with John Eastman. That's number one. Number two is that, Donald Trump has a pretty good idea of what the evidence against him is.
Right.
He lived it, and he has access to discovery. So I don't really think that is a concern. I think that the greater concern right now is that all around America, people are wondering whether we have a system of justice that treats all defendants the same, or whether there is a system of justice for Donald Trump that he gets to delay the cases he doesn't want to have heard until after the election. And that, that if you are a co-conspirator with Donald Trump, you get a different measure of justice, and good for the New York court in moving that case forward. But I wrote about this on Democracy Docket, weeks ago. I think that the judge's treatment of the gag order against Donald Trump showed preferential treatment. We'll see what happens in the sentencing in New York, whether it shows preferential treatment. But I think we have to stop in all of these cases. Okay. Every one of these judges has to stop, giving the appearance that somehow we don't move forward with cases because anything that touches Donald Trump has to be given extra scrutiny.
Right. In fact, them trying not to give the optics of politicization they've bent over so far in one direction that it actually gives the optics of politicization in the opposite direction, that he can completely manipulate the system. Marc, you did mention Democracy Docket. Just a reminder for those watching right now, if you're not yet signed up for Democracy Docket, it is an amazing resource, follows all of this stuff in detail. If you're not yet subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the links right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, I know presidents don't have jurisdiction over the states, but let's say Trump were to win in November. Would he be able to kill this case by some, mangled interpretation of the supremacy clause, for example?
So look, I think we need to understand Donald Trump for the threat that he is. Donald Trump committed a crime to get elected in 2016. Donald Trump has been indicted in several courthouses for committing crimes to try to get reelected and overturn the election results in 2020. We should assume he'll do the same thing in 2024. But if he gets into power, Brian, that crime spree is not going to end, right? So, to say, does he have a legal mechanism to kill this case? No. But
right, he didn't have a legal mechanism to overturn the 2020 election. He did it anyway.
Right, and so I think we need to understand and take Donald Trump very seriously. When he says he will be a dictator for a day, let's assume that it is just a day. What will he do in that day when he's a dictator? Right, but it won't just be a day. What will he do to upset and overturn the rule of law? What will he do to abuse the process? Well, we know what he was willing to do to abuse the process to stay in office. What would he do to abuse the process where his legal jeopardy and his freedom is on the line in these criminal cases? So I take very seriously that he might do just about anything, whether legal or not, which is, by the way, why he is asking the U.S. Supreme Court for absolute immunity. What would absolute immunity look like, Brian? If he was president and he had absolute immunity, what could he do to kill a case?
Marc, at this point, is there any hope that Trump will be held accountable for alleged crimes related to the 2020 election before the November election?
I fear not. No, and that's why I said let this Eastman case go forward. Maybe he can be held accountable before 2020. I think that we have become a nerd, and we've allowed the Overton window to shift about just how extraordinary the judiciary has bent over backwards. As you say, they have mangled justice to allow Donald Trump to evade not just one, not just two, but three criminal trials that stem out of the 2020 election. And you can do all the blame shifting you want onto Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice or Fani Willis or whatever prosecutors. But the fact is that collectively, the judges, the prosecutors, the entire judicial system has allowed Donald Trump to escape culpability for what are his obvious crimes in 2020. And that is something that the legal system, the judicial system, the lawyer, the bar associations, everyone's going to have to come to terms with.
Well, to that point then, and we'll finish off with this, there are a lot of folks who are going to look at this outcome, the outcome in Georgia, the delay that he got in Florida, the Supreme Court taking up this bogus claim of presidential immunity. They're going to look at all of this and lose faith in the justice system. So what's your message to those people?
Look, don't let the cynics win. The cynics want you to lose faith in our systems. They want you to lose faith in our judicial system, in our electoral system, whether your vote counts, whether or not what you do and say matters. That is what they want. Donald Trump is counting on you to lose faith in the judicial system. He is counting on you to lose faith in the electoral system. He wants you to not expect him to be held accountable by the courts. He wants you to think your vote doesn't matter. And you can't do that. We rely every day on the judges of this country to hold Donald Trump accountable, to stop voter suppression, to prevent election cheating, to stop election subversion. And so far, the system has held more than it hasn't. But it doesn't mean, Brian, that you and I shouldn't point out where it has failed. Okay? So we can both point out where the system has failed while also insisting that the system work. And the way the system will work is by everyone watching this video, making sure they're registered to vote, and they vote, and to make sure their vote counts, and to not let the electoral system operate without them. But it is also for them to insist that judges do their jobs, that the Supreme Court do its job, that prosecutors do their jobs, because we cannot have a system in which there is not a functioning judiciary. We cannot have a functioning system where there is not accurate and free and fair elections. And Donald Trump wants there not to be. So please don't give up.
Absolutely perfectly put. Again, for those watching right now, to support the invaluable work that Marc and his team are doing, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.